Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Career Conversations here at University of California, Merced. I am joined today by Eric, who is going to really talk about a little bit about wealth management, finance, and that industry as a whole. He's with Merrill Lynch, really a great expert at looking at this industry, looking at ways that you, the student, can possibly navigate that industry, and talk a little bit about some of his advice and strategies going forward for that specific industry. If this is your first time joining us for such a podcast, we host these as a way for you to connect and learn more about different industry pathways. This is a great way to learn about competitive strategies as well as trends that you may not know about within the industry itself. So, Eric, I want to welcome you, and I want to begin with you today with the first question. And this is a question that is largely given in an interview setting, 95% chance that you will receive this question. And the question that I have for you is, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Robert. So I thought I'd share a little bit about kind of my background as a student here, and then now me working in the professional career that I work in that may be useful to students. So obviously the way I answer it would probably not be the exact way you would answer it in an interview, but at least, I wanted to be able to share that I was an alumnus here. I graduated in 2016. I got my degree in economics, and at that time, management was a standalone degree as well too. And so I was able to do a dual degree program. And then after that, I've been working at Merrill Lynch now for roughly about 7 years. So I've been in the career now for about that long. I still live in Merced. I live close by the campus. I live just right down there in the Moraga neighborhood. And so, I eat at the same restaurants you guys are. Come to campus every now and then to talk with people. And so, I want to basically just kind of let you guys know that, we may be able to relate in some way, and that hopefully some of the information that I share with you guys, might be useful in your guys' interest of maybe a career in wealth management or just a career in finance in general.
Awesome, what a pro answering that question. That is textbook right there. Fantastic answer. Really appreciate it. My next question for you is: are there any ongoing changes and trends within the wealth management area that maybe students need to be aware of, or that you're particularly excited about in the future? This is an area that usually sees a lot of changes, a lot of rapid changes. And so is there any trends that you would like to let our audience know about today?
Yeah, definitely. Wealth management, for those that maybe don't have the full understanding of wealth management, if I can maybe just simplify it a little bit, you can kind of boil it down into two contexts, right? One is the investment management side, where you're directly maybe helping clients individually and institutionally maybe surround themselves in terms of what would be good potential investments, and maybe with the construction of a portfolio for them to invest their assets in. And then secondly, also you're kind of maybe helping on the advisory side, where maybe you're providing some sort of financial guidance and planning. Like I said, whether it comes to the individual or institutional side as well too. So that's sort of in a nutshell what wealth management is. Like I said, the mixture of both investment management as well as investment advice and financial planning. There's been a lot of changes. I think what's trending now, especially as the conversation is around like AI and stuff like that, right? And definitely AI has had its place in wealth management. So there's been the birth of a lot of automated investment strategies, right? A lot of places now, especially with your own investment accounts, can basically help automate an investment strategy for you that's maybe tied to some sort of index that does provide some sort of rebalancing for you as well too. So definitely the AI, is what's currently trending now, but as it has actually existed, especially in the investment landscape, for a long period of time, and are a lot of the tools that we as investment advisors and people in the career already utilize on a day-to-day basis. But that's sort of, been an ongoing trend where, we do see sort of a lot of the market gravitating towards that, but it also opens up a landscape where the value of the career and the benefits of working in wealth management are basically changing, right? So it's not necessarily just the one function. And if we can go over the generational changes in wealth management, right, where it used to be just simply buying and selling a stock recommendation or a bond recommendation, you maybe call somebody on the phone and say, hey, I think XYZ stock may be a great buy. How many shares can I buy for you? And then maybe you make a commission off of selling that, right? And then it gravitated more towards, hey, let me put together an investment portfolio for you. I'll charge a percentage of managing that assets for you. And then also 3 now, where we're providing banking and also financial advisory services. So we've already seen the career kind of develop and change over time. And the influx of AI becoming more popular, if you will, right, is no different, right? There's always going to be institutional changes to multiple careers, right? And wealth management is not shielded from that at all. But where we do see things changing is very similar to, like, let's say, the legal and tax landscape as well too, right? Where we have a lot of automated maybe tax programs that people mostly use every day, H&R Block, TurboTax, et cetera, and stuff like that. Same thing with law stuff, LegalZoom, right? And for the most part, I would say like those tools are great for a majority of people, right? Same thing with like maybe in wealth management, that there's a lot of great wealth management tools now that people utilize, right, that are probably great for a majority of people, but there will always be a subset of individuals or institutions that typically need more complex advice, right, when it comes to maybe navigating more complexity, when it comes to estate planning, when it comes to taxation, when it comes to specialized assets. Then in those cases where it's like, this is where a wealth management person will probably be more oriented towards serving those individuals in those capacities, especially higher net worth clients or higher net worth institutions that have more complex problems or issues that they want more guidance on, if you will. So I don't really see anything completely dissolving, where like, oh, a complete industry will be completely overtaken by technology in some way. I think more so you'll see that development where people working in this space will simply just have more of a complementary aspect working with technology, or 2, probably providing much more specialized services that don't cater to the masses, but more so cater to a nice specialized individual within that strata, right? So a lot of times technology is beneficial to maybe a majority, but there's always some strata that, will probably benefit from much more of a personal touch and want some better guidance, if you will.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you talking about and bringing up AI. That's been a theme from a lot of the companies that have been on this show. They're looking at it. They're trying to struggle with it, and there's a lot of excitement in the space. I think a lot of investors are also excited about it. I know that there's a joke with in the investor communities of, hey, if you see a company's margins tightening, all they have to do is mention AI in a conference call, and bam, everything fine. And so I know it's an interesting space, and I know that navigating that space is going to be really interesting in the future. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I know that a lot of students are probably wondering, and maybe even others out there wondering, hey, what is this space? What is the true value of this space? So I think there's a lot of risk management, risk approaches when dealing with this new sector. So thank you for bringing that up. On the ideas of trends in wealth management or other financial investment related areas, how can current undergraduate students seeking a career in this space really prepare for these trends in the future?
Yeah, I mean, the finance industry is so broad that it's so specialized in certain ways. Like, you can work in wealth management, like what we sort of talked about, where you provide investment advice and portfolio construction for maybe individuals or institutions. You can work in, for example, like asset management, where you're constructing portfolios for publicly sold funds like exchange traded funds or mutual funds, or on the private equity or VC side, where maybe you're constructing portfolios for limited partners. Or you can be working on the banking side, where you're providing financing and advisory services to different businesses. So I mean, the broad spectrum of finance is so broad, right, where I think in general that students shouldn't think about like, oh, how do I necessarily get into that per se with a specific thing that I need to do. Because honestly, it's like it's not going to be one specific thing that you do where you're automatically going to get that job. And I think that's the wrong way to think about it. But what I think students should be doing in terms of maybe constructing a good story on the resume to basically maybe increase their chances of finding some sort of entry level position is to basically kind of fill their resume with a lot of professional experiences, right? So, I think a lot of the things that you can do on campus will be extremely helpful when it comes to like, joining organizations, joining societies, right? It's really great in terms of like a lot of providing you maybe a lot of social power. You get to maybe interact with friends, and these are great connections to maybe have down the road when you guys graduate or maintain some friendships as well too, right? But I think it's also worth filling out, adding some professional experiences in there as well too, right? You don't want a resume that's just completely 100% of things that you only did on campus, right? The idea is that when an employer wants to hire you, the idea is that you want to basically make sure that this is the least amount of risk for that employer to take you on, right? When an employer decides to hire you, a lot of times it may actually be a negative, function for them, right? So it's hard to say that like, as soon as you start the job that you'll be automatically productive for this company. So more than likely, when you first start the job and they're paying you the salary, your wages, your benefits, they actually might be losing money, right? But the idea is that they're trying to invest in you. So what can you do to sort of demonstrate the least amount of risk of you being a bad hire for them, right? So, a lot of times it's like, we go to school for a reason. We go to college to signal that, we're able to attend class on time, that we're able to complete our assignments and jobs and our tasks, in a meaningful way, if you will, right? In a dutiful manner and, with a good grade to a certain level of expectation, right? So the idea is like, okay, well, great. But the idea is like, okay, how do you also do that in a professional setting, right, too? So this is where I really heavily encourage for students to try to look for either during the summers off, either during the school year with maybe they have some downtime, et cetera, and stuff like that. Go find, either a local business or any business, right? Work part-time, work pennies on the dollar, work for free, right? But the idea is like, hey, get some experience where you can demonstrate that, hey, you've been able to work in a professional setting, where you've been able to get tasks done on time in a meaningful manner, where you've been able to objectively help the business in some way where you were able to make them more productive or at least build value or add value to them, because that way it'll make the next employer much more reasonable in terms of one, giving you that opportunity to hire you, because that way you can sort of de-risk their decision. So I would encourage a lot of, students to kind of focus in that manner, right? Like I said, it's perfectly great, for you to have a lot of these social positions and stuff like that. It's great for social wise in terms of building great communication skills and interacting with others, et cetera, and stuff like that. But what I don't want is, just filling out your entire resume of just these pure, maybe positions that you only held in organizations on campus, right? So the idea is like, when an employer looks at that, they want to make sure like, okay, well, what does that look like outside of the university now, right? What happens if we apply it to maybe something that was done in a much more professional setting? Was that still, did you have the same results, right? And can you actually explain those results? And two, it'll be good for like, professional references as well too, right? So that's what I would encourage is like any summertime, any downtimes during the year is go find some sort of professional setting that you can work in, right? Like I said, if the way you can do it is like work for free, work for pennies on the dollar, do something for a business. I mean, any business likes to hear that, hey, somebody will work for me for free, right? And you can have it be meaningful and productive for them and help them with their bottom line. That's awesome, right? And then that's valuable to you as well too, because guess what? That's an extra experience that you can leverage on your resume that'll help you attain, another high-paying job down the road.
Thank you, and you also alluded to the idea of storytelling, which was also another theme that has been brought up. Another organization brought that up is like you tell a powerful story, which honestly, if you have a truly meaningful experience, you'll be able to tell a very powerful story. How truly valuable that is. If you see us moving around, by the way, one of our mics went down on the show, so we're passing the. One of the mics that work back and forth.
Yeah, Robert and I are really getting to know each other really
well. Yeah, so
here.
we're moving it around off camera, and so you really alluded to what a student really needs to do to thrive and really adapt to those next steps. I wanted to get to our next question, which is a question that everyone receives on this show. It's another one of those questions, and this one has nothing to do with wealth management. It's more of a way to just make you human. And that question is, what is your favorite ice cream flavor, and why is it not bubblegum? Fans of the show know that I am no fan of bubblegum ice cream. It is my arch nemesis. I just don't get it. If you're going to want that flavor of bubblegum, why not just get bubblegum? Why take ice cream and eat it and swallow that flavor? It just blows my mind. What do you think? What's your favorite ice cream, and why is it not bubblegum?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I mean, to be truthful, I'm not a huge sweets fan, but when I do eat ice cream, I generally prefer. I think Haagen-Dazs makes a really great vanilla ice cream. It's simple. It doesn't have a lot of ingredients, and also too, it's nice and dense and rich. So, like for example, there's a lot of ice cream out there that what they do is that when they pack it into its packaging, they actually fill it with a bunch of air bubbles. And so what happens is that some ice creams taste extremely light because they're able to, sell it to you in a higher weight and higher packaging because essentially they're able to compact air in it. Haagen-Dazs, they typically have much smaller packaging, right? It's really rich, so I don't eat a lot of it. But when I do, it's really nice because, like I said, it's rich, it's dense, it's very simple. The ingredients don't have a bunch of filler ingredients, so that's how I know it's actually real ice cream. Versus, yeah, sometimes a lot of ice cream is just filled with like guar gum or other stuff that is not real ice cream, but is great filler because it's cheap and then it helps the company make a lot of money. But yeah, I guess that when I do eat ice cream, Robert, I'd probably go for Haagen-Dazs. I'm a simple guy, just like vanilla. Yeah, but I agree. The bubblegum would not be on my list though.
Exactly. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I think vanilla is a great flavor too. I always get
It's
it for,
simple.
like,
You can do
milkshakes
anything you want to it. If you don't think it's enough, then add whatever you want to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
Yeah.
Why fix something that already works?
That's right.
So, my next question that I have for you is, why is now the time to work in wealth management, finance, and investment management?
Yeah, I would say that wealth management or just finance in general, at least in my opinion, I think is probably one of the few professions in general where you probably still have a decent chance of making a good wage and a good earning to probably maybe live that middle class or upper middle class that, most American households want, if you will, right? It has still a decent return on investment in terms of your education. So, and the career is still expanding. There's different ways where, all in general, wealth management, finance, investment management, all it boils down to is what we call capital allocation, right? And capital allocation is such a crucial element of our economy where we're able to move funds from one area of the economy to maybe another area of the economy to accelerate its growth. So it's not a profession that's going to be gone or anything like that, right? So, and two, there are different, obviously, macro factors that could limit the, growth of it in some ways. But in general, especially in wealth management, a lot of times is, you're working with individual clients and institutions that these are typically long-term clients. And so even despite, market drops or recessions, your job is to actually help net clients navigate those times, right? By either making adaptations to their portfolio, or two, just walking them through the psychology of market downturns and what they look like. And so, it's a career that's relatively, recession proof in some way, right? You're probably not going to maintain the same level of productivity, but at the end of the day, you may still have a job, right? And especially during these times, then people don't probably feel comfortable dealing with the robot or something online, especially when they want, somebody to actually kind of give them the proper guidance and look for that guidance, right? So don't get me wrong, it's just like calling a 1-800 number, right? It does the job for the most part, but eventually sometimes you just want to hit zero and talk to somebody because you've got a problem that, pressing 4 is not going to help you answer, right? So it's the same thing. In just about every field where, your job in this field is a lot about, understanding, what the dynamics are and exactly how you can still be relevant. and learning to still be relevant in that path regardless of what trends may be formulating in the background, if you will, when it comes to like technology or anything else now too. But in general, like I said, it's a rewarding career. You get to help directly with either individuals or institutions. You get to understand the nuances of capital allocation and how our economy works and behaves, and how productivity has grown significantly in our country, especially over the last 50 to 60 decades, where we've been able to move and transition from an industrialized society to a much more service-based economy that has provided a much better quality of life for most people in the U.S. in general. And then too, like I said, our economy has shifted so fast towards a service-based economy where these are probably one of the few careers where you can still have a relatively rewarding career, compensation-wise, if we're looking at maybe having the highest probability of attaining maybe that upper middle class or middle class lifestyle that you want for your family down the road, or and maybe potential pathways too that can be the building blocks to attaining even much more lavish style, if that's something that one wants down the road.
Yeah, and I agree with you as well. You mentioned, even during like downtimes, during recessionary environments, people want to protect their assets, and there's a lot of risk out there, particularly in downtimes. When times are good, the marketplace is obviously a lot easier, but a lot of people want to protect their assets even during those down periods of time. So the idea of risk on, risk off, I think is critical. And so you make a really important point there. Now, we may have students in the audience right now that are really sold on the idea and they want to follow your footsteps. If they are sold on this idea, what should they do right now in order to start that process of actually going down the road that you went? Any advice in terms of strategies of applying to the marketplace? Where should they go next?
Yeah, I mean, there's not like a magic formula per se. I would say, if you definitely want a career down finance, I mean, everybody's path might be a little bit different, but I can tell in general, at least, what might be good things to consider that might increase the probability of attaining a job in this space. I can kind of break it down into some higher level points and then maybe down to some lower level points, right? So one, higher level points, what worked for me is like, I work locally. One of the things is that my family is locally here. I've got family in the Bay Area as well too, and I live here in Merced right now. The Central Valley is a much more rural area than your San Francisco or Los Angeles, right? So the competition for financial professionals is a lot less, right? We're much more in demand. Versus if you go out to maybe San Francisco or Los Angeles, New York, these are big financial hubs where, financial professionals may be a dime in a dozen, right? So the services are still needed, but they're obviously not needed at the same level, if you will, right? So in terms of a higher level standpoint, I think one thing that maybe, students should consider is that, finance is a relatively competitive field. So how do you kind of make yourself, or what can you control to make yourself in a much more competitive landscape? One thing that you can change is locality, right? So, it doesn't mean, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York are not the only places where finance jobs exist, if you will, right? They exist everywhere. And also, finance jobs don't only exist in banks, right? And investment firms, they exist everywhere, right? The university even has a CFO, right? The university has finance people and controllers that manage the budgets and the grant monies of the university, right? So, and this can be applicable to just about any business, right? Businesses in general, all are surrounding themselves in regards to financial management in some aspect, if you will, right? So it doesn't necessarily need to boil down to, where specifically working at a bank, if you will, right? And a lot of times it's like, those things can be completely different. There may be some overlap, et cetera, and stuff like that, but in general, like I said, it can be very applicable to multiple sectors, working at a hospital, working at a university, right, working at a business or something like that. So, for the aspect of one is locality, right? So You don't have to look for jobs only in the Bay Area, only in LA. If you don't have, family that, you need to be close to, or maybe a significant other that you need to be close to, then I highly encourage students to look for great jobs in other metropolitan hubs all around the country. Like, the world is so vast, the country is so vast. I mean, like, you can move out to Oklahoma, move out to Georgia, right? Move out to Texas, move out to all these areas that have wonderful hubs, and they have wonderful and are looking for in-demand financial professionals that they can't necessarily seek, and where the market and the local demographic just do not have the supply for. And so they're always looking for maybe outside of state talent to kind of come in and help fulfill those jobs, right? And the thing is, to be truthful, it's like if I blindfolded one of you guys and I dropped you in the middle of a Whole Foods in Tulsa, like, you would not know the difference between one city and the next city. It's like every city is the same city. It's skyscrapers, like buildings everywhere, Starbucks on every corner. It's the same thing, right? So that's what I would encourage as students, to maybe consider locality as a big macro factor in terms of maybe where they want to look for a job, right? And that'll kind of help with the competitive landscape, right? And two, like I said, is like, don't be so narrow-minded in terms of thinking that, oh, only a finance job can be attainable at a bank. And that's just not true, right? And that kind of what I mentioned a little bit about before is maybe gaining and attaining maybe some sort of professional experience, right? You can gain some sort of financial experience, working at any business, right? So the idea is that don't be limiting yourself. Like, the more you limit yourself in what you want, it just decreases your chances of actually attaining a job in that specific field, right? The whole idea is that this is just an entry-level job, right? So, kind of what about painting your story is that you want to demonstrate at least some professional experiences related to finance, right? Where maybe you can work on budgets, work on, different projects, et cetera, and stuff like that, and actually end up in some sort of positive net return, right? And then, you can simply navigate the same concepts, and these same skills are very applicable to almost any setting that has to deal with management of budgets, right? Which is just about any business, if you will, right? So the idea is that, don't be so narrow-minded in terms of locality, right? And don't be so narrow-minded in terms of fields that you can, and businesses that you can only get a financial job in, because it's just not true that only jobs in banks are available. Like, finance jobs are available in just about any other industry as well too. And basically, any industry that you can tap into, be appreciative about it, be grateful with it. The entry-level job is usually the hardest to get into. So the idea is that, do what you can to at least tell a story, paint a story that you're navigating and progressing towards an area of finance. And then two, try to get that first job, whether it's somewhere not local, right? Whether two, it's maybe not directly at a bank, right? But you can at least start painting that story to maybe ultimately move and progress towards where you actually ultimately want to go to.
Sounds great, and really appreciate your time and answering these questions. I know it will help out our students quite a bit. And so I'm just very appreciative of you giving your guidance and advice to the student population if they're interested in moving on into this sector. So that is Eric with Merrill Lynch. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Of course.
And look forward to hearing more about your adventures in the future as a fighting UC Merced Bobcat.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert. No, it was a joy to be here. Like I said, I try to provide anything that hopefully is somewhat valuable to maybe some of the students listening. So yeah, that's basically my primary objective. So, welcome to, contact Robert. Welcome to contact Career Services. There's a wonderful network of alumni that are always seeking to maybe try to provide some advice to students. And that's what I really want to make sure that my advice and my help is guided towards, is how can a student really extract from this and, take away that's maybe something that's applicable and practical to their job hunt. Like I said, I was an alumnus not too long ago, right? So the idea is I want to hopefully help you guys and be relatable in some way, right? Towards your future goals and endeavors.
Well, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Appreciate the time. And if you're still with us right now, don't forget we have more of these that you'll see pop up on your screen in just a moment. So don't forget to select through a number of other career conversations available to you right now. Thank you so much, everyone.